Assalamu alaikum, may peace be upon you all. This is Muslim Minds, and we're back with another video from Cogito called Islam Explained. We're going through Cogito religion stuff because we like their videos.
Indeed.
Islam. Everyone's talking about it. With a global community stretching from China to Timbuktu to California and everywhere in between, this religion is the way of life of a quarter of humanity. But what is Islam? What do Muslims believe? And what is Shakira's law? Well,
What?
let's find out.
Shakira's law?
With about 1.8 billion followers, or 24% of Earth's population, Islam is the second largest religion on the planet. Therefore, the universe. Muslims make up the majority of the population in
Now it's over 2 billion. And the largest denomination in the world is Sunni Islam. If you want to compare like denominations of all the religions.
49 countries, as diverse as Yemen, Nigeria, Albania, Kazakhstan, and Malaysia. This 1,400-year-old religion started in modern-day Saudi Arabia, but today only 20% of Muslims are Arabs. Indonesia is actually the country with the most Muslims, holding around 13% of the world's total. About 30% of Muslims live in India, Pakistan.
And on the point of extremism, I just want to get this out of the way now. People need to realize that extremism is not tied down to the religion. It's just a cold hard fact. People don't want to hear that because they want to associate Islam with terrorism so they could satisfy their kind of preconceived notions about Islam. But the reason it isn't is because all these nations that have these extreme groups are all politically war-torn countries. They have several issues. You know, you have young
Or the people
fighters,
are just uneducated.
young fighters that grow up in, war-torn climate. They will use anything to garner followers or build up. And what better than a religion? That's always the go-to.
Indonesia's the biggest Muslim
and
country
that's
in
the
the
point I was
world.
gonna make.
That's like the safest, nicest place to live. People
just
that are
that.
non-Muslims go there to retire.
Think about this.
Indonesian
Hamza.
people are so nice. If
how
you ever
many-
see Indonesian
how
people,
many
they are very
extreme
nice.
groups come from Indonesia? How many can you name?
I don't even know a single one.
There you go. That's the whole point. Indonesia has so many Muslims. Look at that right there. The number says 225
I mean,
million.
even India, I know there's some issues, but India, you always hear it's from like war-torn
That's
Arab
what I'm
countries.
saying. Yeah. So, and again, whether they were Christian, Jewish, atheist, whatever it is, they're going to use whatever means, whatever belief systems they have in those countries to fuel their kind of violent desires that they would have had with or without the religion.
And just like there's some Christian terrorism that happens in America. We don't blame all of Christianity. That just doesn't make any sense.
Weird groups like the KKK, we don't be like, oh, you Christians are all like, no.
Or even the one-off people.
Yeah, like lone wolves type.
Yeah. You better stop it, guys.
Pakistan and Bangladesh.
That's right.
Christianity is named
Sharia
after
Law.
Christ, Judaism after the tribe of Judea, and Zoroastrianism after the 1998 swashbuckling adventure film The Mask of Zorro, starring Antonio Banderas. But Islam is named after an action. Islam means submission to God, and Muslim is the person that submits to God. The root meaning of the word Islam means peace, safety, and security. The Arabic word for peace, salam, comes from this root along with the Hebrew word shalom. So, submission to God means finding peace by following God.
That's all correct, but I don't know why there's a Muslim in the men's side of the masjid. Like a
Muslim
Muslim
woman?
woman, yeah.
No, yeah, if you notice like these similarities between Islam and Judaism with, shalom, salam, even our greetings, salamu alaikum, shalom alaikum, right? It's because Islam is the same religion. It's just what we believe to be the preserved and purified version of God's faith on earth.
Yeah, God's the new covenant, the newest covenant.
The final covenant.
Around the world, regardless of language, most Muslims greet each other in Arabic saying Assalamu alaikum, peace be.
Okay.
Assalamu, he tried, bro.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, all Muslims, it's like mandatory to greet Muslims with Assalamu alaikum. You're wishing peace upon them. It doesn't matter if you know them or not. Even if you don't like them, you have to wish peace upon another Muslim. Even a non-Muslim, you just go generally with peace. You be nice. That's the way we greet each other.
Yeah.
So, get wrecked.
Get wrecked.
Just kidding.
Islam originated in 7th
so
century
defensive
Arabia
already.
with a guy
We know
called
what the
Muhammad.
comments will be like.
Before we can get into Muhammad's life, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. His name is Sebastian, and he is standing in front of my whiteboard explaining the controversy surrounding drawing Muhammad. Sebastian, can you Can you just scoop?
I'll explain it really quickly before, right? Highly revered person. We believe God's, chosen human on earth to be the greatest messenger, prophet, seal of all prophets. It's disrespectful to depict him. And people will take these images and just make fun of it. And you wouldn't depict God. I wouldn't personally
Just
want
look through human history. People idolize and they create like mythical stories over people in the past, and they create them as like demigods or pray to them and stuff. So we
these
don't do
images,
that.
you are inclined to kind of almost revere it. Almost.
Yeah, revere to a supernatural state. Like you're not even human anymore. That's why we believe the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the best human ever, but he was a human. That is it. He is not an angel. He's merely a human like us.
Over there. Can you just please move? Okay. Drawing Muhammad is a controversial and emotional political issue. Firstly, the Quran, Islam's holy book, has no ban on drawing Muhammad, but the big three Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, all have rules against making images of any living thing. This comes from the Torah, and some Muslims and Jews take this rule very seriously. Islam kept this rule going so that Muslims wouldn't worship in front of images of Muhammad or God. Instead, they pray directly to God. Some Muslim societies have drawn Muhammad in the past, Iranian cultures especially. Today, most Muslims are offended by disrespectful images of Muhammad, but respectful images are usually fine, especially in Shia Islam, the second largest branch of Islam.
And we mentioned this before, like for those who take matters into their own hands and violently persecute those who are making images or mocking. This is not Islamic. This does not represent the main body of Muslims. Those are individual actions by people who we excommunicate from the faith ourselves. Like ISIS. They are nothing. They kill more Muslims than they kill non-Muslims. And another point on that is when it comes to depictions and like these kind of individual actions of violence or whatever, these people without Islam probably would have done the same thing for other things. Disrespect their mom, they would probably kill you the same way.
Yeah.
But they pin it
and
on
also,
the faith.
if you watch the Andrew Tate reaction, which you should watch after this video, he also points out, which makes sense, why would you want to do that? Especially if you're making it in a disrespectful way, which is usually what the Western media do. Why would you want to do that? They are egging people on for a huge reaction.
Yeah, you're gonna anger about 2 billion people on Earth.
You already know think there's one
nutcase. There's one nutcase that's gonna, especially if you're a big figure like Charlie Hebdo, right?
Yeah, obviously it's not good. No one is advocating for violence at all.
Yeah.
But you're asking for a negative reaction
in some way. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And the majority of Muslims disagree with violence in response to depictions of Muhammad. To be respectful, as we always try to be, this silhouette will stand in place of Muhammad. No, not that. That's Sebastian again. Please, Sebastian, move. You're making me look like a fool. This is the silhouette.
They made him avoid.
Sorry. Muhammad was born in 570 CE in Mecca in Arabia. His parents died when he was very young, and Muhammad grew up as an orphan. Back then, the Arabs worshipped hundreds of different gods, and Muhammad's tribe, the Quraysh, were the guardians of this building, the Kaaba in Mecca. They packed the Kaaba with
Someone made a very
of
interesting comment in one of our last videos. They said, the Bible, for example, has good historical accounts of what happened in its era. Islam has nothing like that. It's not a historical document or anything. And I thought that was hilarious because literally most of what we know about Mecca or Medina or the Arabian Peninsula from that time is from the Quran and Hadith. There's not many
doesn't even make sense. What? I don't get.
Yeah, I had a hard time understanding it as well, but it was something to the effect of like the Bible has historical accounts of its era, meaning that the Bible is a reliable source of history from that time, like about Israel and all these kind of things, and
The Quran is not a history book.
No, but even then, like that point doesn't make sense.
But it has history in it.
Yeah, exactly. Like there is history in it, so I don't understand what his point.
And obviously, the Bible might have more of that because it was written by people
who lived in that.
Yeah, it's written by people.
Like of course it will, but that's not even our contention. Our contention is like whether Jews existed during that time, whether there's a man named Jesus. It's how much did these stories turn into legends? How much did they like become injected?
That doesn't make sense because the history in the Quran, it is undeniably true. So
yeah, that as well.
So be better, guys.
And the Quraysh got filthy rich, taxing pilgrims visiting the Kaaba. Muhammad was deeply religious and wanted to improve his community. All around him, he saw poverty, injustice, war, and widespread discrimination against women and orphans. Muhammad saw the rich abuse the poor, and religious festivals had just become giant, decadent parties dedicated to the worship of idols.
This is the best religion ever! Woo!
woohoo, religion
Oh,
party.
shades.
What?
Instead of attending religious festivals every year, Muhammad would just go and pray alone in a cave. Then, in 610 CE, in the month of Ramadan, during one of these lonely cave prayers, Muhammad, now 40 years old, was visited by Gabriel, or Jibril in Arabic. Jibril told Muhammad that there was one
What the
God
heck?
and that he was now God's
What's that
messenger.
picture?
Muhammad received revelations directly from God and then recited them aloud. His companions wrote these revelations down and they became the Quran, Islam's holy book.
Very interesting point I also want to bring up. A lot of people claim that, oh, this was not Gabriel or an angel, rather it was like a demon that came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which I think is interesting because, like, what did that angel bring to him? Oh, before every prayer say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, which literally means, in English, I seek refuge from Satan with God. Like, why would Satan reveal such a thing? Or, like, giving
Nothing
money
that
to the
Islam
poor, to
calls
the
for
sick, taking
doesn't
care of
even
your
make
family.
sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense at all.
If you want to be satanic religion, there is actually Satanism.
Yeah,
You guys don't look at it.
worship one God. Like, I don't understand why, anyway.
Pray 5 times a day.
Yeah. Almsgiving.
Satan's really benefiting from that one. Giving to the poor, feeding people, what?
Yeah.
Muhammad's
Like I said,
words
be
were
better.
radical in tribal Arabia. He was saying stuff like, Arab has no superiority over non-Arab, white has no superiority over black. He also demanded an end to the practice of killing infant girls because boys were preferred, saying that girls were equal blessings from God. This didn't exactly go down well.
Literally the first faith that's actually saying there's no difference between men and female. Even female, it's more beneficial for you to raise a female.
Or no difference,
Yeah.
meaning like in their
And there's-
piety, except for of their good deeds.
There's no difference in races. A non-Arab or an Arab, there's no one better because they believed Arabs were better. Or there's no difference between a black and a white person for racism.
Yeah.
So it destroyed everything that was in the society in those days. It's literally taken America still today, these issues, these dumb issues.
Yeah.
Now it's Juneteenth and we're celebrating how like America's slavery stuff. This already existed 1500 years ago.
Yep.
In tribal, sexist, and hierarchical Mecca. This whole one God business annoyed the Quraysh because they made money charging people to visit Kaaba to worship hundreds of gods. The poor, slaves, and others flocked to Muhammad. The Quraysh, now furious and losing money, abused the Muslims, especially the vulnerable ones like slaves who were frequently tortured if they converted. But the Muslims didn't fight back. Muhammad and his God
Wow.
outlawed violence. The Quran said, whoever kills a person, it shall be as if he killed all mankind. After a decade of this persecution, the Muslims fled to the city of Medina. This move in 622 CE marks year 1 on the Islamic calendar. Right now, January 2021 CE is 1442 on the Muslim calendar. Even in Medina, the Quraysh kept attacking the Muslims. So God told Muhammad Muslims could fight back. But God laid down some ground rules for the fighting. Do not target public places, do not destroy farms or herds, do not harm women, children, the elderly or disabled, do not harm animals, trees or plants, and be kind to prisoners and do not forcefully convert anyone.
This is what the theology teaches, right? So if you have incidences in history where this is violated by human beings,
Then they are sinful in that.
yeah, they're sinful. They're not a reflection of the faith. Just like you could say the same thing about Christianity and many other faiths. So.
Yeah, so and he said everything perfectly. This is objective.
Yeah.
He's not even a Muslim. This guy, he's like an Irish guy.
Yeah, Islam
From
advocates
Cogito.
even in war.
Even
there are many rules. You
Cogito
can't-
knows.
Yeah, can't cut a tree down in war. You can't harm your prisoners, slaves. If you do, you are sinful.
Yeah, you can't harm this nice little parrot. Cogito is doing Allah's work.
Strict rules of war were laid down to stop civilians getting hurt. Muhammad said, if someone shows no compassion, God will show no compassion to them. By 630, Muhammad marched on Mecca with an army of 10,000. The city submitted without a battle. Muhammad went straight to the Kaaba and destroyed the hundreds of idols and dedicated it only to God. Just 2 years later, most of Arabia had converted to Islam and was united under Muhammad. Then, on June 8, 632 CE, Muhammad died. Abu Bakr, Muhammad's father-in-law, was
What
elected
is
as the
this?
first caliph or successor. This election is the cause of the divide between Islam's two major branches, Sunni and Shia. To oversimplify a bit,
Oh my
Sunni
God,
believed
shut
Abu
up.
Bakr was rightly elected. Shia believed Muhammad chose his son-in-law Ali as his successor.
Let
Today,
me just quickly address this point. There's not a single hadith or verse in the Quran that stipulates who the next caliphate should have been, or who the caliphate should have been after the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There's not one, and there are many hadith that indicating there are several candidates that should be considered. But while the Prophet was sick and on his deathbed, the one who was chosen by the Prophet to lead the prayers in the main masjid or house of worship was Abu Bakr. This is why he was chosen by, the Muslim body, right? And Ali did becoming a caliphate. He became the fourth one, so he became the caliph.
And the person that leads the prayer is the imam, and that person is the leader of the ummah. But the Prophet Muhammad SAW was sick, so he couldn't. So that is an indication. But it makes more sense. Like, you have a shura, or people, a council that elects someone, and that is better than just, what's it called, like nepotism. You're just electing your own family and like monarchies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, the better view is to you have a council and it's an election between the like very knowledgeable people, and you get the opinions of society as well.
Yeah.
That just makes 100% more sense. You cannot deny it.
And even to say that Ali had like all this animosity towards the other Sahaba doesn't make sense, because Ali himself sent his sons Hassan and Hussein to defend Uthman when his house was being attacked.
Yeah, and all of them were like related in a way. They were married. They had son-in-law, daughter-in-law, stuff like that. They were all kind of related. So there might have been animosity.
Yeah,
or
they
like
can disagree,
small
but
disagreements like any human.
Became overblown.
Yeah, but magnified in history or something like that.
today, Sunni make up of all Muslims, while Shia make up about 13%. Over the next 1,400 years, Islam has spread through empires and trade across the Middle East, Africa, Central and South Asia, and China. It spread to Europe, especially the Balkans and Spain, and merchants brought it to Southeast Asia, and slaves brought it with them to the Americas. And that's a very brief version of Muhammad's story. But what exactly was this new religion that he was preaching? Islam might seem complicated at first, but we can break it down into some very easy to understand core beliefs. 1. Belief in one God. Muslims, Christians, and Jews worship the same God. Muslims just call that God Allah.
And I want to address this point because I know a lot of perhaps Christians, maybe even some Jews, but I don't believe they will actually disagree with this point that we worship the same God. So one of the biggest rabbis, actually Maimonides, he says that Jews can go and actually pray in a masjid because we're worshiping the one true God. He'll actually advocate that a Jew cannot enter church because it's a house of idol worship, because especially if it's Catholic, the saints and whatnot, and praying to Jesus, But on this point, right? So even if we disagree with the Christian, for example, that Jesus is God or a part of the Trinity, or we disagree with the Trinity, we still say that our God is the God of Abraham, Moses, Jacob. There's only one God, true God, who's the God of Moses, Abraham, Jacob, the creator of the universe. So the most that they could say is that we believe in incorrect things about that God, but not an entirely different God, right? This is why the Jews and the Muslims actually are, A-okay with saying we worship the same God. And even with Christians, we would just say we don't consider Jesus God. We believe that the Father is God, which is a, head of the Trinity, right? So it is definitely the same God. If you open a Arabic Bible, it will say Allah right there. Right.
Yeah, with Christianity, it's just a way different understanding.
Yeah.
It's, even Christians say they believe in one God, even though they believe in Trinity. So we all believe in one God.
Yeah, the creator of the universe.
Yeah.
And not only that, even Jesus, he spoke Aramaic, right? He prayed with his head on the ground, as is written in the Bible, right? In the New Testament. And he would have been saying Allah, because that's, God's name in Aramaic was Allah. So, he would have looked a lot like a Muslim, bearded, praying on the ground, Allah, so I think that's interesting. If you saw Jesus today, you would think he was a Muslim.
Because that's the Arabic word for God. Arab Christians also refer to God as Allah. Muslims believe God is the uncreated, all-knowing, all-powerful, merciful, loving, and genderless creator of the universe. Islam accepts that there is only one God, and that believing in other gods or worshipping anything else, be it idols, money, or power, like its God, is a great sin. Islam in general also has no priests, as Muslims are supposed to have a direct personal connection with God. God created the world in 6 days. After creating the world and
not
everything
six 24-hour days. The word in Arabic is yom, means 6 periods of time. Like you could divide the creation story into 6 days.
6 periods of times, for Allah, which could be millions, billions of years. We don't know exactly.
Yeah,
it's not
not
six
specified.
human days. 6 times 24 hours.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
In it, God created Adam and Eve together from the same clay. The Quran states that God created humanity from a single soul. 2. Belief in the divine books and prophets. Muhammad said he wasn't preaching anything new. He said Islam was the original religion of humanity. He was just a prophet tasked with reminding people of the one God and bringing them back to the correct path. Muhammad is also not the only prophet in Islam. The prophets of Judaism and Christianity are accepted by Muslims too. Dozens of prophets are named in the Quran alongside Muhammad, like Abraham, Moses, Noah, and Jesus. Moses, Jesus, and Jesus' mother, Mary, get a lot of mention in the Quran. In Islam, Muhammad
What
and all
is
the
that
prophets are
picture?
just
Fire mother.
humans, but they carry a message, and all prophets brought the same message: a call for peace, a return to worshipping only God, and a
See a
warning.
return because humans rebel, humans innovate, humans change. Even the Jews did this as Moses went up to get the tablets. This is the whole point of Islam, is returning to the true faith, worshiping one God, abolishing this idea that
Straight
Jesus
path,
is God.
the Sirat al-Mustaqim.
Yeah. It's just very straightforward, guys. One God, several prophets and messengers advocating for almost the same things Judaism and Christianity.
Islam is just a continuation. It comes with nothing new. It's just like new explanations because people are on the wrong path, so they have to, present it in a different way. Allah's presenting it now as the last, religion for everyone through the Prophet Muhammad SAW. But in essence, it's nothing new. It's not some new concepts.
I think is also very interesting is the Prophet ﷺ came for all of mankind, right? Shortly after his time, 1,400 years ago is not a long time ago, but shortly after his time, what happens? Globalization. Now you can't have a religion that spans all over the earth, so it came like right at the perfect time it claims to be for all of the world.
And its teachings are adaptable to anywhere. Like Indonesia, the largest Muslim society, thousands of miles away, they're a whole different race.
Before its
and they're
time,
so peaceful because they're Muslims.
Yeah, no terrorist groups, no activity like that. Before the Prophet ﷺ's time, it would have been so difficult to spread Islam all over the world. But during his time and
Even
afterwards,
during the time.
yeah, but then like shortly afterwards, you see like just rapidly
for all the teachings are so adaptable to everyone.
Yeah, it's not bound by any kind of culture. It's very simple rules. Even Arabic, you don't have to like be fluent in it. You just need to understand what you're reading in the Quran and what you're saying in prayer, which really isn't. It's really not a lot, to be honest. I learned Arabic way later on in my life, like the prayers that that you have to pray in Islam, the 5 daily prayers, and even the Quran. And you just take your time. It's very easy to learn. It's not difficult.
Of the Day of Judgment. Muslims also recognize the Jewish Torah and the Christian Gospel as divine books sent down by God. So Muslims refer to themselves along
I would
with Jews,
disagree.
Christians.
We don't refer to the New Testament as divine revelation from God. We refer to what Jesus spoke, his message, as divine revelation from God. The New Testament is more kind of like a historical account of Jesus that's attributed to the 4 gospel writers.
Yeah. That's what Christians say too. It's not like we're just saying that. Every Christian people say that too. Christian scholars.
But the Injil, what we could receive, what we believe is revelation, is what Jesus said himself. And the Torah, we accept the Torah as was revealed to Musa or Moses, but not the Torah we have modern day, because there's no way to verify that this is the book that Moses wrote. The earliest accounts we have is like 1,100 years after Moses.
Christians and some other peoples as people of the book. The big difference between them, though, is that Muslims believe that Muhammad is the final prophet and that the Quran is the last divine book. 3. Belief in the Day of Judgment. God created the universe with an expiration date. At one point in the future, the Day of Judgment will come. The world will end, and everyone that has ever lived will be physically resurrected, and their actions in life will be judged, and they will be held accountable for how they behave. After the resurrection, everyone will move across a bridge that goes over the fire of hell and leads to the entrance to heaven. For those whose good deeds outweigh their bad, the bridge is flat and broad and the crossing easy. For sinners, though, the bridge becomes as sharp as a razor and they fall into hell. Hell is a place of fire. Everyone is tortured, miserable, thirsty. Baby Shark plays all day long. It's awful. Stuff like murder, theft, and cheating will get you sent there. Whereas heaven is a beautiful garden filled with rivers of milk and honey, where everyone is young, healthy, reunited with family, and subscribe to educational YouTube channels. Eventually, most people who go to hell will move up into heaven because God wants people to be in heaven.
Wait, what?
4. The Quran.
So that's true if you're a Muslim. You will not go to, you're not saying hell forever, but there's some people that we believe will just be in hell for eternity.
If you have a mustard seed's worth of faith, then you will be saved eventually one day after you
Like if you've
spend
ever,
your due.
for Muslims at least, if any part of your body has prayed, like if at all, like your head has touched the ground in sajda, or any part of your body parts have been prostrating to God, those parts will not be burned in the hellfire. So for Muslims, we have fear of Allah, we have taqwa, but we do know the mercy of Allah is greater, and we trust if we do our part, then Allah will save us because we believe His promise. But even Muslims can be punished, which is different from Christianity, which is like, if you are saved, then you just go to heaven. But Muslims, we can be Muslims, but
Catholics will just
we can still be, punished.
Quran. The Quran is the holy book of Islam. The word Quran simply means to recite or to say out loud. Muslims consider the Quran to be the direct word of God spoken through the mouth of Muhammad in Arabic. The Quran is about 600 pages long and is divided into 114 surahs or chapters. Each surah is divided into numbered verses or ayat, so you can find any quote from the Quran using the number of surah and ayat. Let's just pick a random number, 3119, which is, "Lo, the harshest of all voices is the voice of the ass." The Quran has no narrative structure. It's organized by
What a verse
length.
to choose.
The longest verses are at the beginning and the shortest verses are at the end. So the topic and narrative of the Quran jumps around a lot. One reason for this is because the Quran is supposed to be read aloud. Many Muslims even memorize the whole Quran. The Hadith are the
They
second
have
most
been
important
since the
literature.
time of the Prophet.
Yeah, and also just a point of clarification, the Quran is not a book. It is the spoken word of God revealed through the angel Jibril to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. When it's in its written form, in book form, it's called a mushaf. So the book is not exactly the Quran, but when we recite it, that is the Quran.
Yeah.
So it's not, the Quran is not a book.
Yeah, the Quran is not just one book because there are even different ways of reciting
not a
it.
book
The
at all.
7 qira'ah,
Yeah.
right? So that
It's a recitation.
Yeah, all that is the Quran because there's different ways of reciting it that have been confirmed by the Prophet ﷺ. So that is all the Quran. Like you may have a mushaf that has one kind of style of recitation, but then you have another mushaf with another confirmed style of recitation. So these different qira'ah and ahruf, that's what all makes up the Quran. So for example, Hamza and I, because the emphasis is of reciting and memorizing, even Hamza and I know quite a few passages of the Quran, right? Inshallah, to memorize it one day. It's just something that has been encouraged for us to do, to become, have the Quran living and breathing in your mind.
In Islam after the Quran. The Hadith are the sayings or actions of Muhammad, not God, that his companions heard and wrote down. Hadith fill in information that's not in the Quran on how to be a good Muslim. The Hadith were passed down orally before being written down. So not all Hadith are created equal. They're ranked from
It's kind of like the Quran is the guideline, and the Hadith is how to execute certain actions, like how to pray, for example.
Yeah, for
the
some
details
stuff.
of prayer are in the authentic Hadith, which it looks like he's about to get into.
The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was known as the walking Quran. So if you want to know how to implement the Quran properly, you look at the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's life and what he did. Because he's the walking Quran. He's the best human we can look to as our example and role model.
Yes.
Strong down to weak, depending on how trustworthy the chain of transmitters from Muhammad is. For example, the hadith that reports that Muhammad said, "Forgive him who wrongs you," is considered strong because the chain of transmitters is trustworthy, whereas the hadith that talks about 72 virgins in heaven is very weak, and so most Muslims don't believe it. Sunni and Shia Muslims use different hadith, and some Muslims don't follow the hadith at all. 5. The 5 pillars of Islam. This core belief is split into 5, pillars. These act as the blueprint for how Muslims behave. First, you have the Shahada. The Shahada is simply a statement. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. This is the shortest possible explanation of what Muslims believe. Saying it just once honestly makes a person a Muslim. Salat. Salat means prayer, and practicing Muslims pray 5 times a day. Before Salat, Muslims must perform wudu, or
If
ritual
anyone
washing.
is interested on how to become a Muslim or wants to convert to Islam, please leave a message in the comments and we will gladly help you out.
Of the face, arms, head, and feet. Each salat begins with the saying, "God is most great," or Allahu Akbar, followed by prayers in Arabic, along with movements like standing, bowing, and kneeling. Seriously, Muslim prayer looks like a proper workout. Because a Muslim stops
Just
whatever
funny
they're
because
doing,
even Orthodox Jewish prayer looks like this as well, and Jesus prayed like this in the New Testament. So when we say that it's the same religion of God, these are kind of you could take from that what you will.
Yeah, and if you look at what this is on like a more basic understanding of modern day, now like the big rage is like meditation and being mindful and stuff like that. This is what is in our religion already. We have 5 prescribed times a day where we're being mindful of God, saying Allah is the greatest, like we're not as good as him. Anything that's happening in our lives, God is greater. So it reminds us of what's really important, keeps us grounded.
Yeah.
And we do this 5 times a day. So that just shows like we are very, we try to have humility in our lives and, keep grounded and stuff like that.
Yeah, disconnecting from like the busyness of everyday life to
See
completely
what's truly important.
just fall into prayer. Yeah.
To pray 5 times a day, they're reminded of God and the values of the Quran. And when praying, Muslims face Mecca. The direction towards Mecca is called the Qibla. Muslim places of worship, mosques, are planned so that one wall, the Qibla wall, always faces Mecca. Even though mosques look different depending on where they are in the world, they all have a Qibla wall. Zakat. Zakat is a charitable tax on wealth that all Muslims should pay annually. The basic rate is about 2.5% of your current wealth. The Quran says, give money cheerfully to the relatives, the orphans, the needy, the traveling alien, the beggars, and to free the slaves. I'm assuming traveling alien probably means something different in that context than how I'm imagining it. Or does it? Today, every year, somewhere between $200 billion and $1 trillion is given to charity by Muslims across the globe through zakat. Muhammad preached that accumulating wealth was greedy. To stop the rich profiting off of poverty, the Quran outlaws interest-bearing loans known as usury or riba. Money can never be traded for money. Muslim wealth can only come from actual labor or fair trade. Swam. Swam is fasting. During the holy month of Ramadan, Muslims fast from dawn to sunset. Fasting includes no eating, no drinking, and no smoking. Pregnant women, the sick, and the disabled do not have to fast if it puts stress on their bodies. And women on their period can also delay their fast. Through fasting, a person experiences how the poor suffer on a daily basis. And fasting breaks up life's regular routine and invites interest on a daily basis. Through fasting, a person experiences how the poor suffer on a daily basis.
But that's not the main point, actually. I hear this point a lot. The main point of fasting is obeying God. And through this, because it's an act of worship, through this you gain something called taqwa, God consciousness. You're always thinking about God, your creator, and it fulfills you and raises your faith.
Yeah, you're at a higher state, basically. But just to point out, everything he's saying so far, it's all objectively good. The pillars of Islam. There's nothing bad that's happening. And this is stuff we do like daily, which is praying, or like giving zakat and stuff. You have to do every year. Purifying our wealth and distributing wealth to people that are unfortunate. Literally objectively good things. There's nothing bad about it. Literally.
And there are benefits to fasting, health, and even I guess sociological.
But before anyone comes in and say Islam is a bad religion, like nothing here is bad. There's nothing bad that Islam is calling to, So Cogito is doing Allah's work yet again.
Daily basis. And fasting breaks up life's regular routine and invites introspection and meditation on God. Ramadan ends with the feast of Eid. During this holiday, Muslims give extra zakat to the poor, share food, visit their mosque, and eat with friends and family. Hajj. Hajj is the pilgrimage to the Kaaba at Mecca, the holiest place in Islam. Every Muslim must make the pilgrimage once in their life, if able to do so. For over 1,000 years, Muslims from all over the world have flocked to Mecca. On Hajj, there is no distinction.
And I've clarified this a couple times in our last video. So this black cube in the middle is called the Kaaba, okay? There's no images, there's no idol in there. It's just a house. It's an empty house. You used to be able to pray inside of it, right? You can even pray in that semicircle. But the reason we pray in the direction towards the Kaaba is because it's a unification point for the Muslims to pray to, ordained by God. But there's no idol or some kind of polytheistic.
Yeah, its walls have been renovated. If it's been broken down and rebuilt up, it's not like some holy
it's just
wall.
It's like
it's a holy place, but the building itself,
the whole place is holy. The building itself is just like a point, kind of like what is the word I'm thinking of? A point. It's I don't know how to describe it.
It's a central location for Muslims.
Yeah, it's just it's like an identifier, right? Yeah. But there's I can go, we have been there actually, and I can tell you, no Muslim prays to the Kaaba. This is, I think, a sad point. Some people
It's just a unified direction that we can worship
Right.
God towards. So the closer you are to it, the more rewards because you're closer to it. It's also the place where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ prayed, and we believe that Abraham
actually.
constructed it.
There's a point. I just remembered in the Old Testament, the Jews used to face their temple and pray. It's just how it is. Their holy temple, we face the new holy temple, right? So that's literally the
Yeah,
only...
in the beginning of Islam, we face Jerusalem too. And then
exactly.
this is the new established place
we face the
for
temple
Muslims. Yeah. So it's not some like conspiracy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, guys. Even Cogito knows.
Rich and poor, or nationality and race. Today, more than 2 million people make Hajj every year, and those are the 5 pillars of Islam. Next, let's look at some topics you've probably heard a lot about when it comes to Islam. Women. Islam and women is a pretty topical issue. So, how does Islam address women, and what exactly is the deal with the veil? Well, first of all, this is a hijab, this is a niqab, this is a chador, and this is a burqa. The hijab is by far the most popular veil at sea. The burqa and niqab are only found in deeply conservative communities or Afghanistan, and the chador is mostly found in Iran. Not all Muslim women wear veils, and some Muslim majority nations have actually banned headscarves, while in other Muslim majority nations, women are pressured to wear them. It's a controversial.
He said some countries ban this.
Some Muslim majority countries banned the hijab.
That's dumb.
I don't think that is true.
That's happened in Egypt before.
Somewhere's
Yeah.
No, there's no Muslim majority country that's banning it. They may be just like, oh, they're not gonna do anything if you don't wear it because it's not like the most important issue. You're not gonna like be violent towards people. But I don't think there's any Muslim country that's a Muslim country that is banning hijab.
Yeah,
that's banning
like
something that's in
Islamic
Islam.
government. Yeah.
Come on, Cogito, what the heck? You were doing so good.
Controversial issue within Islam itself. But why do some Muslim women wear these veils? One reason is culture. The veil is part of many people's cultural identity. Another reason is that Islam preaches modesty. Muslims should be modest in their words, actions, tempers, desires, appetite, everything really. Men and women are instructed to wear loose-fitting clothing that should cover most of the body. There isn't a difference made in the Quran between how men and women should dress, and it never states that women need to cover their faces. Veils in general seem to have entered...
Pretty much the point is that it is mandatory to wear hijab, and it is also mandatory for men to also observe a type of concealment as well. We have to cover what is called our awra, which is like kind of a certain section of your body that shouldn't be seen by the public eye. For women, that does include the hair and like, other...
chest and stuff,
chest
and
like,
legs.
your legs and whatnot. But again, the reason for this is modesty. If you don't do it, you are sinning. But the proper Islamic response is not to like physically
to
attack,
educate and advise, not to do some action of violence.
Educate and advise. That you got it right.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Early Muslim culture from their Roman neighbors. The only reference in the Quran to women covering their faces is about Muhammad's wives, and most Muslims.
Why does it look like they're on fire?
That's like I think Persian artwork back then, to denote respect, they would just set their heads on fire, like in the art.
Consider those verses to only apply to Muhammad's wives. Throughout the Quran, God repeatedly attacks those that say women are inferior to men, and repeatedly demands
for someone to be like, oh, why would that happen to the prophet's wives? Well, you have to think about it. If you're the messenger and prophet of an entire nation, leader of the nation, the number one people that will try to be attacked are your spouses or kids and whatnot. So
they were held to a higher standard. They weren't allowed to remarry with another man because they can only be the wife of the prophet. So they are held to a higher standard.
Yeah, and same with the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu himself. He was also held to a higher regard in many ways. If he were to go out to fight to defend for Islam or something, he would have to do so even if he were completely alone. That's just what is mandated in the Quran. Or he would have to spend a portion of the night praying. He had an extra prayer that actually other Muslims did not have to perform. The tahajjud was a mandatory for
the wives, they chose to do this. They had the chance to leave. It's not like they were forced. If they wanted to not be the wife of the Prophet ﷺ,
and many of his wives are divorcees
in the
and
Quran,
widows.
they said, if you don't want to be with the Prophet ﷺ and you want this world instead and its riches, do that. Or if you want to stay the Prophet ﷺ's wife, stay. It's not a quote, so forgive me if I'm saying it not correctly, but no one's forced to do this. They chose this, and they are the best of women because of it. Yeah. We call them the mother of believers. To respect them.
That women be treated equally. Muhammad even pushed for women's education, saying, if a daughter is born to a person and he brings her up, gives her a good education, trains her in the arts of life, I shall myself stand between him and hellfire. The Quran also guarantees a woman's right to work, divorce, and own property. Halal. Halal is simply the Arabic word for permissible. If something's halal, that means Muslims can do it without worrying it's a sin. Most foods are halal except for pork, donkey, predators like lions, wolves, cats, and dogs, birds with talons, eels, lizards, mice, rats, and monkeys.
Why would you even want to
blood.
eat those things?
Blood is also banned. Don't drink blood. Alcohol is also not halal because alcohol has negative effects on health and society. Although, funnily enough,
look at him, you don't wanna
alcohol
look like
is
him.
an Arabic word. In order for meat to be halal, the
lot
animal
of
must not
world
suffer.
tragedies
Its
come
neck
from
must be
alcohol.
cut quickly at the throat while saying God's name, to give it a quick and painless death. The animal should not be able to see or hear or smell the
Same faith, my guys. Same faith.
previous slaughter, and it must not see the blade beforehand so that it doesn't become afraid. Animal cruelty is outlawed in the Quran. Muhammad said, a good deed done to an animal is as meritorious as a good deed done to a human being, while an act of cruelty to an animal is as bad as an act of cruelty to a human being. Sharia law. Shakira law. Whenever
I never
That's
even,
why
I
he
never,
said it.
oh, I never even knew that hadith about animals. That's pretty
Yeah, that's
amazing. What the heck?
Well, yeah, when you think about it, because
can't.
it's a living being, and like, say for example, you have like a pet or a cat or something, to abuse that thing when you have power over it is just sickening. Why would you do that? Why are you doing
wherever Muslims get
Hell
together,
no.
talk of
I'm not
Shakira law
gonna-
will be near, and that's a big deal, my dear. Shakira noises. Didn't really think this bit true. Didn't think about singing it.
He's still on this.
Sharia law is talked about
was
everywhere
that?
these days. The 3 times it's mentioned in the Quran, Sharia normally refers to the capital W way. The way a Muslim should live to most please God, to bring order to society, and to get into heaven. The literal meaning of Sharia is path to a waterhole, which to a desert people was literally a path to life. Thinking of Sharia as only law tends to cause confusion. Sharia mostly covers personal matters and contracts between people, how to pray or fast, how to treat neighbors, not lying, how to marry and divorce. This stuff is the main focus of Sharia, and how to pray isn't something that's enforced by law. The Quran in general doesn't have much law in it, but Muslim societies wanted to have laws influenced by Sharia. So, looking at the message of the Quran, Muslim scholars decided the goals of legal Sharia were the protection of life, property, family, faith, and intellect. Over the centuries, scholars made claims about the Sharia and then backed up those claims using the Quran, the Hadith, and reasoning. The body of legal rulings that came from their interpretation of the Sharia was Islamic law, or fiqh in Arabic. But fiqh is the result of human opinions, and so can be wrong and is changeable. Fiqh can try to capture the Sharia, but probably never will. So fiqh evolved constantly. Sharia is aspirational. It was never written down in a big ancient book of unchanging rules. Different Muslims around the world and at different times have different interpretations of what Sharia is, and made fiqh based on those interpretations.
evolving
You might
law.
see Saudi Arabia,
Based
Daesh,
off the
or
time
Boko
and
Haram
context.
cry Sharia as they abuse and torture people. But most Muslims do not consider what those groups do as Sharia in any way. Most Muslims would consider violence to be anti-Sharia.
Yeah, again,
But
just on this point, ISIS has killed more Muslims than they have any other group of people. These
Yeah.
extremists are not from the religion, from the political war-torn countries that they stem from.
headlines focus on those groups anyway. Sharia can and has been used to champion justice and equality. For example, Musawa is an organization which uses Sharia to promote gender equality. That's the fascinating thing about Sharia. It's an argument, process, a way to learn, grow, and adapt. So, those are the basics of Islam. It isn't even close to covering everything. I probably only covered about 1%. One video simply can't cover everything. Religions are too diverse, too deep, and mean too many different things to different people. But I hope that this could act as an introduction to you. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and let me know.
I actually thought he did an amazing job and covered Islam is a simple religion. Like, if you know this and you're happy with it, you can become a Muslim. Like, anything else you'll learn over time, it's not that important. As long as you know the 5 pillars which you went over and you understand it, like in your heart, and you want to take the Shahada, the testimony of faith, you are a Muslim.
Yeah.
So he literally probably gave like 99% of Islam. All the other things you can learn over time.
Yeah,
It's
like
not a
a
huge
core.
deal. Yeah.
Like
like
fiqh and all
optional
this, you
stuff.
can go on for years, but
Yeah.
that's like
You don't even need to know that
you
really.
don't need to know that. Yeah.
It's not necessity. As long as you're doing the minimum things of following the five pillars of Islam, you will go to Jannah. You'll go to heaven. So he literally covered 99% of what you need to be an amazing Muslim in an objective way.
Yeah, objective, very comprehensive. He didn't
Yeah.
pander to the typical stereotypes, and he
He's
even tried to
came
address
from
some
an
of them.
academic view and even
Yeah.
a Muslim view.
Yeah.
So
It's very interesting.
yeah, it was very good. I mean, similar to John Green's crash course video, just
Yeah.
some facts.
This was just well
And
done.
this was like very good too. He gave better explanation of Islam than some Muslims do.
That's what I'm saying. Like these are not even like
They're not even
Islamic
Muslims.
videos and or like from this like Islamic produced videos, and
Yeah.
the content is very good.
Yeah,
Very
so
accurate.
if you guys disagree with whatever he said, you're just like not to be rude, you're wrong. This is just facts. It's objective facts. And obviously you can't go into everything. There's some stuff that Muslims do that are wrong, but that's not to do with the faith. Just like it said, he brought up the Quranic ayah that Allah says, if people are going towards compassion, you need to be compassionate too, which means even if someone's doing something wrong, or even if you're in war, if someone wants to be compassionate, you must be compassionate back. Islam is not a religion of evil or killing. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he went back to Mecca on the conquest of Mecca.
Could have
He
wiped
could have
them
wiped
all
them all
out.
out, but he didn't kill a single person. It's compassionate. It's not. We're not just making something up.
Yeah,
There's no conspiracy here at Muslim
my,
minds.
I
We're
al-
genuine Muslims.
I always tell my
Rahib and I.
Christian friends that look, say you wanted to convince me of Christianity, for example, right? The way you do that, the way you convince someone of your faith, is not by attacking, lambasting, and throwing lies at the other person's faith that they already know is not true, right? What you have
Making
to do,
straw men.
you have to present your
herrings.
faith to be superior. You have to present it to be the truth. You can. I'm not saying you can't criticize, but criticizing points that every Muslim will just roll your eyes at, like telling us we worship the Kaaba. It's just like we're gonna look at you and be like, dude.
Yeah.
You have to present your faith in a way that is clear, that'll resonate with our heart. Like we just reacted to a video not that long ago about Tristan Tate, and I said like you don't convert to a religion. The religion kind of like comes into your life, right?
It's a journey.
It's a journey. It resonates with you. You don't just decide I'm a Christian today. I read the Bible. No, it has to happen to you, right?
I will say for Islam though, it can be a pretty fast journey of like a 5-minute explanation.
You're
Because
very
you only need to
open-minded.
understand the 5 pillars. And you only need to believe there's only one God, Allah, which just means God, and that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is his final messenger. And then you believe the other pillars of faith, like about the books, the other prophets, the Day of Judgment,
Oh, the
and
6 pillars of
predestination.
Iman.
Yeah, the 6 pillars of Iman. And then you are a Muslim.
The 6
through and
pillars
through.
of Iman is technically kind of breaking down one of the main of the 5 pillars, the Shahada, going into what that faith is, because that Shahada, or that pillar of faith, right? It's broken down by 6 other pillars that kind of explain what the faith, what you need to believe, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
But it's pretty simple.
yeah, it is, yeah.
But yeah, very good video by Cogito. Any other videos that we should watch by him, leave down below. Any comments on the video or our discussion, leave down below so we can look at it. We always try to reply and look at every comment. And yeah, guys, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.